The Disney Company is a global entertainment powerhouse, beloved by billions of people across the world for its iconic films, timeless characters, and magical storytelling. But what many people don't realize is that some of their most famous titles were actually inspired by real-life events, ancient folklore, or surprisingly dark and twisted stories. So, in today's video, we're diving into 5 Disney films that may completely surprise you with their origins, some of which were so disturbing, tragic, or inappropriate that they had to be heavily altered just to become suitable for a young audience. Let's kick it off. At number 5, I have Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. When Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs was released in 1937, it marked a groundbreaking moment in cinematic history. Not only was it a massive hit, but it also became the first full-length animated feature film ever made. It introduced the world to what would become the long and beloved line of Disney princesses. We all know the version of the story Disney gave us. Snow White lives with her cruel and envious stepmother, the evil queen, who becomes obsessed with being the fairest of them all. When the queen learns that Snow White's beauty has surpassed her own, she orders her huntsman to take the young princess into the forest and kill her. However, the huntsman cannot bring himself to harm the innocent girl and instead lets her go. Snow White then finds shelter in the forest with 7 lovable dwarfs, but the queen soon discovers that Snow White is still alive and disguises herself as an old hag, offering the girl a poisoned apple. When Snow White takes a bite, she collapses into a death-like sleep, believed to be gone forever, until a handsome prince arrives, kisses her, and breaks the spell. Snow White awakens, and the two live happily ever after. A beautiful, innocent tale, right? Well, the original story, written by the brothers Grimm in 1812, tells a version that's far more haunting. The general structure remains similar, but the ending is shockingly gruesome. Instead of a romantic kiss waking Snow White, the prince simply wants to take her glass coffin with him because of her beauty. As his men carry it through the forest, they stumble over a tree root, causing the coffin to fall. The jolt dislodges the piece of poisoned apple from her throat, and Snow White wakes up, not through love, but by accident. But it gets darker. After she recovers, she and the prince plan a royal wedding and invite nobility from across the land, including the evil queen herself, who is unaware that it's Snow White she's visiting. When the queen arrives, she is forced to wear a pair of iron shoes that have been heated until they're red hot. She is then made to dance in them until she collapses and dies in agony. This was her punishment for trying to murder Snow White, a chilling conclusion that clearly wouldn't have made it into a children's animated film. At number 4, we have Pocahontas. Among Disney's princess films, Pocahontas is perhaps one of the most debated and controversial. The reason? It's actually based on a real historical figure and events, but the truth is far more complex and tragic than the romanticized version Disney portrays. In the animated film, Pocahontas is depicted as a wise and a free-spirited Native American woman, the daughter of a powerful chief. Her father wishes her to marry a brave warrior from her tribe, but she instead falls in love with an English captain named John Smith. Their love is tested when tensions rise between the Native Americans and the English settlers, who are portrayed as greedy treasure hunters looking to steal gold. However, the true story of Pocahontas is quite different and much darker. Born around 1595, her real name was Amanut, though she was also known by the nickname Matoaka. Pocahontas was a childhood nickname meaning playful one, or spoiled child. She was a member of the Powhatan tribe in the Tidewater region of Virginia, and her early years were marked by conflict as English colonists arrived and clashed with the native peoples. When English explorer Captain John Smith was captured by the Powhatan tribe, it's believed that Pocahontas, who was around 10 or 11 years old at the time, intervened during what may have been a ceremonial execution or mock trial, throwing herself over Smith to spare his life. Whether this act was spontaneous or symbolic remains debated among historians. Contrary to the romantic storyline in the movie, there's no strong evidence of a love affair between Pocahontas and John Smith. In reality, years later, Pocahontas was kidnapped by English colonists during escalating tensions. During her captivity, she converted to Christianity, adopted the name Rebecca, and eventually married English tobacco planter John Rolfe in what is considered the first recorded interracial marriage in North American history. The marriage was likely part of a political strategy to establish peace between the English and the Powhatan people. In 1616, Pocahontas traveled to England with Rolfe and their son, where she was presented to English society as an example of a civilized savage to garner support for the Jamestown colony. It's said she saw John Smith again while in England, but she reportedly turned away from him, refusing to speak. Tragically, while preparing to return to Virginia in 1617, Pocahontas fell gravely ill. She was taken ashore at Gravesend, England, where she died at just 21 years old. Some believe she may have been poisoned, though no official cause of death was ever confirmed. So, while Disney's film is loosely inspired by real people and events, the sanitized love story masks a much more complicated and somber historical truth. Now, at number 3, we have Tangled. Released in 2010, Disney's Tangled tells the story of Rapunzel, a young princess born with magical healing powers embedded in her long golden hair. She is stolen from her royal parents by the evil mother Gothel and raised in a secluded tower where she is told that the outside world is too dangerous to explore. Each year, Rapunzel watches glowing lanterns float through the sky on her birthday, unaware they are released in her honor by her grieving parents. As she comes of age, Rapunzel grows more curious and yearns to see the lanterns up close. When she encounters a roguish thief named Flynn Rider, she convinces him to help her escape the tower. Through a series of adventures, the two fall in love, and when Flynn is fatally wounded, Rapunzel uses her powers to save him. In the end, her true identity is revealed, she reunites with her family, and the couple lives happily ever after. The original version of this tale, however, is much older and far more disturbing. The story of Rapunzel was first published by the brothers Grimm in the early 19th century. In their version, a lonely couple lives next to a sorceress named Dame Gothel. When the pregnant woman craves a herb called Rapunzel from Gothel's garden, her husband sneaks in to steal it. He's caught by the witch, who agrees to spare his life, but only if they give her their unborn child. After the baby girl is born, Gothel takes her and raises her in isolation, locking her in a tower without doors or stairs once she turns 12. Rapunzel's long hair becomes the only means of access. She drops it out the window so Gothel can climb up. One day, a prince hears Rapunzel singing and falls in love with her. They begin secretly meeting and plotting her escape. However, Gothel eventually discovers their romance. In a jealous rage, she cuts off Rapunzel's hair, banishes her to a desolate wilderness, and uses the severed braid to lure the prince into the tower. When he finds Gothel instead of Rapunzel, he throws himself from the tower in despair. Though he survives the fall, thorns blind him. For months, he wanders the forest blind until he hears Rapunzel's singing voice. When they reunite, her tears miraculously restore his sight, and they go off to live happily together. Gothel, meanwhile, is left trapped in the tower, where she presumably dies alone. It's a tale of betrayal, love, suffering, and redemption, but its darker elements, including child abduction, exile, and self-mutilation, are why Disney softened it for modern audiences. At number 2, it's Pinocchio. Often hailed as one of Disney's finest films, the 1940 animated classic Pinocchio follows the adventures of a wooden puppet who dreams of becoming a real boy, told through the perspective of the wise and whimsical Jiminy Cricket. The film begins with the lonely woodcarver Geppetto, who wishes upon a star for his puppet Pinocchio to come to life. That wish is granted by the Blue Fairy, but with a caveat. Pinocchio must prove himself to be brave, truthful, and unselfish to become truly human. The film follows Pinocchio as he is lured away from school by dishonest strangers and becomes entangled in a series of misadventures, performing in a traveling puppet show, being imprisoned, lying, which causes his nose to grow, and eventually ending up in the belly of a massive whale named Monstro. In a heroic act, Pinocchio saves Geppetto, sacrifices himself, and is later revived by the Blue Fairy for his selflessness, finally becoming a real boy. This heartwarming narrative was based on the adventures of Pinocchio by Italian author Carlo Collodi, first published in serial form in 1881. But the original tale is far from child-friendly. Collodi's Pinocchio is rude, selfish, and often cruel. In one of the earliest chapters, he even kills the character who would later become Jiminy Cricket by smashing him with a hammer for trying to offer advice. The puppet runs away from home, faces brutal punishments, and is frequently tricked and tortured. His wooden feet are burned off, he's imprisoned, beaten, and scammed. At one point, he's nearly executed by hanging, an ending Collodi originally intended as the moral climax of the story. Publishers were so horrified by the grim tone that they insisted Collodi revise it, adding the Blue Fairy as a motherly figure and softening Pinocchio's journey into one of eventual redemption. Yet the story remained deeply rooted in harsh lessons, warning children about the dangers of disobedience, dishonesty, and laziness. Thankfully, Disney transformed the narrative into a touching fable of morality and transformation, but the original remains one of the darkest children's stories ever written. And finally, at number 1, I have Winnie the Pooh. Winnie the Pooh, the honey-loving bear with a heart of gold, has become a symbol of childhood innocence and warmth. Created by English author Alan Alexander Milne, Pooh and his companions, Piglet, Eeyore, Tigger, Kanga, Roo, Rabbit, Owl, and their human friend Christopher Robin have charmed generations with their gentle adventures in the 100-Acre Wood. But few know that these characters were inspired by real-life figures and possibly reflect something much deeper than just playful imagination. In 1925, Alan Alexander Milne's son, Christopher Robin Milne, became fond of a real bear named Winnipeg, nicknamed Winnie, who lived in the London Zoo. The bear had been adopted by a Canadian soldier during World War I and donated to the zoo before he went off to war. Christopher Robin would visit Winnie frequently and named his own stuffed bear after her, eventually calling him Winnie the Pooh. This beloved toy became the inspiration for Milne's classic stories. But beneath the light-hearted tales, many psychologists and readers have theorized that the characters represent various mental health conditions, though Milne himself never confirmed this. Still, the theory has gained traction over the years, especially because of how closely the characters' behaviors align with known disorders. Winnie the Pooh, with his scattered thoughts, impulsive behavior, and obsessive need for honey, is often interpreted as having attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or known as ADHD, and perhaps even obsessive compulsive tendencies. Piglet is viewed as suffering from generalized anxiety disorder, constantly worried and lacking confidence. Eeyore, with his persistent gloom and pessimism, is seen as a symbol of depression. Tigger, always bouncing and impulsive, may also exhibit signs of ADHD, particularly hyperactivity. Rabbit's controlling, perfectionist nature suggests obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD, while Owl's spelling mistakes and disorganized thoughts may point to dyslexia. Kanga, the overprotective mother, could be experiencing social anxiety disorder, and Roo, her son, may be the only one without a condition or possibly represents childhood innocence. Then there's Christopher Robin. With his vivid imagination and anthropomorphized stuffed animals as companions, some have speculated he might be coping with loneliness or childhood trauma. A more extreme theory suggests he may be experiencing a dissociative disorder or schizophrenia, imagining the entire world of the 100-Acre Wood as a mental escape. While these interpretations are unconfirmed and highly speculative, they offer a fascinating lens through which to view the stories. Whether Milne intended this symbolism or not, it's clear that these characters resonate deeply with people for a reason. So these stories remind us that even the most wholesome, comforting, and magical Disney films often have roots in stories that were much darker, stranger, or even tragic. Whether drawn from folklore, history, or personal experience, the origins of these films are fascinating and sometimes unsettling. But that's the power of storytelling. Disney has taken these tales and reshaped them into narratives of hope, courage, and transformation. So, next time you rewatch one of these classics, remember the hidden layers beneath the surface. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.